Hi, friends, fellow evolvers, and curious people everywhere. Welcome. I'm Sally Wilson, and I have with me as my esteemed and very fun guest today, Ashton Bishop. Welcome, Ash.
Thanks, Sally.
Now, I was just commenting on Ash's t shirt there, which is a visual for your organization, right? For Step Change, which you're the CEO of, right?
Yeah. Yep, so step change, inspiring step changes in businesses and people. But the moment and our magic moment is where we turn that question mark into the exclamation mark, where the confusion disappears, the path become clear, and we turn the how into the wow. So yeah, that's our t-shirts.
I love it. The visual says a thousand words, as they say. So, Ash, you've had a very interesting life and career. You studied law, you studied commerce, right? You're also dyslexic, right? And that's often, I find, a way of thinking. Some of my friends, a lot of my friends and people I've interviewed who have dyslexia have a different way of thinking that
Mm.
is really powerful. And it's outside the box because it kind of had to be, right?
Yeah,
Um,
well, they say with dyslexia that we just see the world differently, which is kind of cool. So if everyone else is seeing the world the same, then dyslexic people have an opportunity to see it differently. But it doesn't always necessarily make we see it the right way or we make good calls. So with law and commerce, it was like smart enough to get in, dumb enough to do it. It was completely the wrong course for me because you go, oh, can't read well. Let's sit in the law library under the weight of 300-page dissertations and law judgments. Just like made no sense. So had to find workarounds.
Yeah, well, and that fascinated me too, because when I read in one of your previous interviews that you were dyslexic and you'd studied law, I was like, how did he do that? So, what are some of the workarounds that you found that obviously worked for you?
I think there was something called, because in law, you're meant to read the full cases, but there was something called Blackwell's law summaries. And what that allowed me to do was get just the summaries, which were the core pieces. Because what I figured out pretty quickly is that not everyone could read all of the cases all of the time. So there's only so much that they could actually quiz you on. And I guess the other thing I had to be really grateful for, it was a very international university. So a lot of the ESL or English as a second language students meant that there was less of a focus on spelling and grammar. And really, if my weaknesses were the ability to read cases and correct spelling, grammar, and punctuation, my strength was the ability to articulate interesting approaches and be able to solve problems and challenges. So I wasn't without capabilities, but as soon as we got to open book exams, I put my effort into the systemization and structure of my notes. So I was able to then type them up, index them, color code them, and find ways where I could then press my advantage and to be able to organize. So I just didn't rely on my memory, didn't rely on my writing skills. I put in structures and support around me.
Yeah, and just as you were talking us through that, isn't that very much tied to, turning the how into the wow, or going from how to wow, which is how you work with your clients, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just uh, committed to the outcome. So one of the beliefs at Step Change is processes become wonderful servants and terrible masters. So we're never cookie cutter in our approach. We're always saying, how can we support what we're doing with great systems, great processes, and getting to the heart of what's important? And probably that is certainly my capability or my superpower was that when there's an inability to read and digest a lot of information because I'm so slow, my thing is, what's the point? What's the heart of this? What's the essence of this? And the ability to very quickly distill and articulate that essence is what I've taken forward. So that was the bit that was valuable. And certainly I wasn't an HD student through law school, but I made it. And as a dyslexic person to get through a law degree, there's something in that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, how do you help your clients distill that and get to the heart of something very quickly? Because often, business owners, heads of organizations, there's so much noise, there's so much going on, there's often a lot of, well, stress. that comes with that responsibility. How do you help people do that? Because I know that you also mentor on purpose, and I love the word how you say you mentor on purpose a lot. Can you just talk us through some of that?
Absolutely. So we work effectively at bringing together 5 elements, because alignment across teams and alignment within capabilities of organizations is how they become successful.
Mm.
Getting a 10 out of 10 in one area and a 0 out of 10 in another doesn't add up, especially if we're serving a client through to an outcome. So when we actually look at the outcome, we start with the North Star, what we call the big picture, where an organization knows where it's going longer term, because a lot of organizations start with goal setting. It just doesn't make sense a lot of the time. We start with purpose setting. We start with purpose setting, then we have a way to review the context, and then out of that, we can spot opportunities and challenges. And that's the only way that we can do sensible strategy. Organizations go, we've got a strategy. My strategy is to double my business in the next.
Yeah.
It's not a strategy, it's an objective. And to do that, we're going to try harder. That's not a strategy either, right? It's the misapplication of energy. So we help a lot. And probably our greatest skill is as facilitation, right? So we're not arrogant enough or silly enough to turn up and tell you about opera or coaching, or right. No, we're not going to tell you anything about what you know about. Just we're not going to tell our clients anything about their core business, because we've got everything from we used to have a funeral home and a maternity ward. So we used to be birth to burial, then we got a fertility clinic. So we had to change it to fertility to funeral. But literally we worked across all of the ATO's 18 different tax categories. So, 1 minute I'm walking out of a meeting with a plumber and into an Internet of Things integrated platform, high-tech company, then over there to an allied health professional. It's just crazy. And the ability to work across different categories and sectors. And I think you've had the great Craig Rispin, futurist, and how to think like a futurist. And Craig quotes the famous quote around the future's here, it's just not evenly distributed. So our ability to see next practice and best practice faster than just about anyone else, because we work across all of those different sectors and categories. So the whole point about that is that if we're clear on the purpose, we can then look into the context, and then we can find opportunities and challenges. So we get the big picture right, we make strategic choices. There's a lot of power in value proposition, and probably what we're best at is the articulation of value. And that just gets people aligned and excited in the value of their business and their offering. Then go to market. You've got to meet market, and especially in a technical sale or a B2B sale, sales and marketing have to work together. And if they're separate departments with separate agendas, you've almost always lost. Like the late Tony Shea said, the moment you've got departments called sales and marketing, you've lost, right? Because it's all about the service of customer. And then it's about getting things done, which is probably where our worlds intersect, of the psychology of how people act and interact with each other for positive outcomes. And that's, I guess, probably where we intersect and have a harmony of interest.
Yeah. So I'd love to, gosh, all these questions popping up in my mind as you're speaking. I'd love to go back to purpose setting. I think that I've never heard it phrased that way before. Finding a purpose, purpose setting. That sounds very intentional. Because I think that purpose is something that a lot of people struggle with, and I think a lot of people struggle with the pressure that underlies the belief I should have a purpose. I need to have a purpose. I need to find my life's purpose. Whoa, I mean, that's a big one. What is my purpose? And then when you bring that to an organization, how to set that in such a way that everyone gets it and everyone's working towards the same purpose. Can you just speak to that a bit, Ash?
Yeah, absolutely. And the weird thing is, Sally, and it's kind of a little bit cray-cray, is we use the same intellectual property and framework for individuals and organizations.
Right.
Kind of really interesting, isn't it? But there's a separate prime that we do with an individual, because I think what you've touched on there is purpose anxiety. I work with some very high-performing individuals that come out of a cohort where it's like, oh, do you not have a purpose? So it almost becomes this, like the hedonistic treadmill of like people who want more stuff and then they adjust to that and then they want more stuff. So it's never enough. I get this car and then I see that car. And then if I only had this car and then when I get behind the wheel of that one, right? So it's never enough. And they're trying to fill a bucket with a big hole in the bottom.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a lot of the anxiety. And once they've talked about money and stuff and houses and holidays, then they get this identity or attachment to their purpose. And that's the wrong start point for purpose. Because if you look at the 3 levels of happiness of being hedonic happiness, so that is the sexual, food, rock star, woo, right? All of that in the moment, physical, endorphins and dopamine type piece. Then the next elevation is the eudaimonic happiness, where I get significant from attachments. And that's the wrong place to come into purpose, right? People who live through their kids, people who live through their jobs, people who live through their work, all of that is still attachment. The transcendent happiness, the contribution happiness, the living in awe and connection is actually when we let go, because we are connected. There is no other way to be but as one. So the state of awe, whether it be spiritual, religious, or intellectual transcendence, even Einstein being an atheist certainly still said that either everything in the world is magical or nothing is magical. And that state of holding ourselves in that flow state and connected state comes from a transcendent happiness, is when we're actually letting go. And it's from that place of letting go we can create. So to be purposeful or to be full of purpose is not to pursue, but to ensue a purpose. Right? And they're not my words, they're the late great Viktor Frankl around man's search for meaning, or mankind's search for meaning. I think it's probably gender pretty non-specific there. And Dr. Edith Agar is obviously his contemporary, who had a terrible concentration camp experience, but brought to life the human condition of the ability to transcend any difficulty and have a purposeful life ensue moment to moment. And really that's the start point. So for an organization to be ready to set purpose requires them to step outside what I call the ambition, right? So all organizations need to have a commercial lens. And when I work a lot for organizations come and go, we're not for profit. I go, what? We're not for profit. What did you say? Not for profit. No. So what's your focus? You can't think about what you don't want to think about without thinking about it. And your first start point is, we're here to not make any money. Is what you're trying to do important? Yes. Does it require money to get it done? Yes. Is it so important that you don't want to wait for anyone else to give you the stuff, but you want to get it done? Well, saying as you put it like that. Yes. Well, you're not for profit, you're for purpose, right? And it's such an important thing, because that sector and category of the for purpose organizations that are set up to really help and contribute as a start point is so critical. Yet a lot of the people in them get stuck in the, we're not for profit, come help me, come support me because I'm doing good. It's like, it's completely the wrong approach to controlling destiny and becoming committed to the outcome. And that's really the space in which any good conversation around purpose starts, right? Do we have a clear space? So the start point for an organization is, beyond the commercial lens, are you willing to play the contribution game? And for an individual, the start point is, are you willing to move beyond attachment into something more meaningful for you and others? Right? Because it's not either or, right? You've got to, and will it challenge you? It's not about the purpose or the goal. It's about who do you need to become to deliver the purpose and the goal. So there is going to be a stepping outside self. And that means that if people are looking for significance or self-worth out of it, it's probably not going to work for them. If they're looking for contribution because they actually get that we're connected anyway and self-worth is a constant, right? Because you think about the self-worth conversation, drives me nuts. Like, who's worth more, a Sally or an Ash? Who's worth more? Like, what a ridiculous conversation, right? It's absolutely ridiculous for you to go, oh, my self-worth is this and what's yours? And maybe we can compare and have a measuring. How can you possibly do that, right? We've got no idea, right? You've done amazing things and you do amazing things and you work with amazing people and you change their lives and you deliver capability to them. And so do I. And which is most important? The answer is yes, right? So there is no other way for us to relate besides as equals because we just don't know, right? I've got no business in your past. You've got no business in mine. We're here together in the present and who knows what the future is going to hold. So from that place, then we're free. We're both free to create purpose. So you see the pathway for a company and an individual are quite similar, yet some slight nuances in the setup. And then what's purpose, right? It's the reason we exist and what we aspire to be. And it should touch, move, and inspire us and all those around us. Right. So it's easier to say and it's hard to do because it's not cookie cutter.
Yeah, and even that touch, move, and inspire other people. Again, it can't be about other people. That's a byproduct, right?
Sure.
And I was just thinking about the different levels of happiness, and you know, if you go back to even the yogic literature, you know, there's the rajasic, there's the tamasic, and there's the sattvic, and the letting go of attachment. I think what a lot of us don't realize is that we think that being attached to something and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being goal driven here, but being goal driven and attaching and I'm going to achieve this and I'm going to achieve this and I'm going to achieve this and really driving towards it in a forced kind of way actually makes it less likely for us to achieve it in a way that's going to fulfill us. But if in the letting go, you know, and surrender again is such a massive topic in all of the ancient sort of spiritual literature, you know, but being able to surrender or let go of those attachments makes potentials more likely, right?
Absolutely. I've got a whole keynote on that called One-to-One, is that if we actually step out of attachment to self-worth, where we think that if I do the thing, then I'm going to feel different or be different, then we're actually free to just commit, right? So I would describe the difference between commitment and attachment is I can be committed to an outcome and that allows me to really bring it. So I don't use surrender, although I see value in the concept in certain situations, but when it comes to goals or committing to something, when I commit 100%, but I'm not attached to the outcome, right? Yes. I'm always focused on locus of control, right? What can I do and be and bring? And then it'll turn out the way it'll be, right? And then I can let go and let down at that point. But certainly, because I think what conversation? Yeah, the conversation in my head, right? That conversation that we're all having with ourselves the whole time. I'm not having a conversation. Yes, you are. Right? That little voice that's talking to us can trick us a lot. And I think this in the letting go part is very clear. It's letting go to the attachment. It's not letting go to the need for work. And I think we're so bombarded by the quick fix and the miracle outcome and all of that attraction stuff. And yes, it's important, but it doesn't replace hard work, discipline, structure, and commitment. And I think all of those habits that we set around our ability to commit to something meaningful, a purpose won't come to life unless there are the right habits, foundations, and supports in place to drive through to that outcome.
Oh, absolutely. I think, you know, there are a lot of misconceptions about particularly the law of attraction. You know, it's just kind of laden with, a misunderstanding. I think the whole idea, but self-effort has always been necessary. And you know, if we want to talk about it in terms of just work and habits, and you know, it makes me think of a time when, or the times when I, you know, was a young singer and went to do auditions, and when I had done all the work I possibly could towards that audition in preparation and very consciously let go of any attachment to the outcome, they are by far the best auditions I did. And I mean, it just happened that, you know, they're the roles I got. But once I done that audition, it didn't matter to me anymore. It didn't matter because I'd done everything I could and
Yeah.
I'd represented myself well. I was able to represent myself well because I had relinquished that attachment to the outcome that I need to get this role, you know.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's actually underneath a lot of the work I do that allows me to crack purpose really quickly and really well for organizations and individuals is what I call empowering beliefs, which is putting underneath the purpose the belief set that holds it in place and empowers it. Because what we believe determines what we value, and what we value determines how we act, and that determines our outcomes. And it's beautifully described in what you talked about. There was the big role that I needed to audition for, so I did the work, I got in the moment, I let go, letting myself know I'd leave that complete. And one of my beliefs and what I related to is I believe in leaving each moment complete. There is no value in looking back with regret. There's a huge amount of value in saying I either got the result or I learned something, like huge amount of value in reflection, not terribly a lot of value in regret, i.e., leaving a gap, leaving myself the out, selling myself short, tripping myself up, self-sabotaging, all of those behaviors that are so easy to trip into just make that whole process ineffectual. So I think empowering beliefs is a really interesting space that works with purpose. And if someone's stuck on purpose, I just go back to beliefs.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we need to talk about this more because it's huge. Our beliefs run our lives. Our beliefs inform our identity, as you say, our behaviors, our choices. Um, and, you know, cell biologists say that our lives are kind of like I'm talking about Bruce Lipton in particular here.
Mm.
They're like a printout of our subconscious beliefs, the beliefs that are running all the time on automatic pilot and informing our every aspect of our lives. So, can you just talk us through what you see as the different? I think you have sort of three different categories of belief. When we were chatting the other day,
Mm.
can you talk us through those?
Yeah, so if you imagine like a bit of a Gaussian distribution curve, like a bell curve distribution, and you say, well, look, there's a lot of noise that goes on at the moment, and the amount of noise is increasing. So our ability to focus out or focus into what's important and shut out the noise is getting harder and harder. To identify the potency of what exists either side of the bell curve and what exists right at each side. So right at the negative side, you've got really the disempowering beliefs, right? And in a Marty Seligman sort of narrative style, you've got things that are permanent and pervasive, right? I'm unlovable. Things don't work out for me. Nobody wants all of that. A statement about me, or yeah, and it probably is the individual level, right? Because if you think about organizational purpose or organizational beliefs, is a collection of individuals united by a common purpose. That's what an organization is. And whether the purpose is clear or not clear, it's still there. So it's either clearly articulated and intentional or it's unintentional, but any organization is just a group of people united by a common purpose. So disempowering beliefs are very dangerous. If left to fester, if given light, even if engaged with in terms of an arguing with it, still gives it life, because then we look for evidence for and against, and we can get often trapped in today's breakthroughs, tomorrow's ego trip, right? If we think we've overcome it, we're actually just giving it to life, because a lot of our disempowering beliefs have no business being there. They were gifted to us before the age of 8 years old by an unintentional event, a malintended person, by circumstance, happenstance, who knows? But bringing those things to life and nurturing them, giving them airplay, is really dangerous. So there are disempowering beliefs, and I think certainly everyone has got them or can come across them or can relate to them, but they're not helpful. Then you've got negative beliefs that just come in a a slither of our lives. So if I say I'm no good at public speaking, disempowering belief, classic, right? Your ability then to coach me to find my voice, to sing, to project, to breathe. If I'm just going, oh, it's not going to work for me. Yeah, Sally could coach anyone but me, right? Because I can't public speak. Just so negative, right? So just as a negative belief, like it creates me small and actually creates you small too, as the coach and the mentor. So a negative belief's really dangerous. Most of the stuff in the bell curve though is just this shit happens, right? Neither good or bad. It's just noise and nonsense and just create carves up headspace. Then you've got positive beliefs, which are almost, you'd imagine those in the affirmation space, right? You say, but I'm the fastest man on the planet. I'm the fastest man on the planet. I'm the fastest man on the planet. Works well on a running track, not so good behind the wheel of a Ferrari after 7 drinks, right? So a positive belief has some utility, but generally in a defined context. Then you get to empowering beliefs. Empowerers, they power purpose. Why? Because they help you filter through the noise, focus on what's important, and make the value-based decisions that lead to positive actions that push your purpose forward. And it's so important, I'll say it again, right? If we think about empowering beliefs, our purpose is the cumulative effects of the effect of the decisions we're making moment to moment. What decisions that we make, or what framework do we have? Well, our beliefs determine what we value, our values determine our actions, and our actions will accumulate or compound into the affect of our purpose. So that's why they're so critical. I believe there's always something to be grateful for. Right? I believe in leaving each moment complete, what you were talking about before. Right? I believe in paying it forward. I don't need an immediate payoff to do things as something for somebody, right? All of those are examples of empowering beliefs, which when we sit underneath purpose or they empower purpose, it just holds it in place and it becomes clear on what is most important in any moment.
Yeah. I think one of the things that is a real struggle for people is a lot of these beliefs remain in the subconscious, and I'm talking about particularly the disempowering and negative beliefs. Because if we pick them up when we're sort of up to 8 years old,
Mm.
we often don't question them simply because they feel like they're a part of our identity. It's so normal. We actually forget that our beliefs, our identity, all of this is malleable. I mean, if it
Mm.
weren't malleable, we wouldn't have wound up with these things to begin with, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's kind of recognizing, recognizing, becoming aware of these beliefs to begin with
Mm.
is really difficult for people. And then recognizing that they're not the truth necessarily.
Yeah.
They're just beliefs that we picked up,
Mm.
random ideas, and we can change them in order to change our lives. And one of the things that I think is also a real misconception is that we've also been taught that transformational change needs to take a very long time.
Yeah.
That is not my experience. What about
Mm.
you?
Oh, look, I think it comes down to the belief system, doesn't it? Right? For someone that believes that transformational change is possible transformationally, then it's possible. For someone who is absolutely convinced it's not possible, good luck. Right. So it is anchored in the beliefs, and anchored's probably the right word, because you can put on a 350 horsepower, you can put 2 on, but if somebody's got the anchor stuck down with a disempowering belief, good luck.
Yeah.
The ability to integrate conscious and subconscious, I mean, is fascinating. You've done a stack more in that area than I have. I have done NLP, hypnotherapy to a practitioner level. So I know a little bit about the power of metaphor interacting with language and the malleability to actually connect subconscious and conscious in meaningful ways. And instead of just getting stuck and using the power of our conscious to create a narrative and justifying the subconscious, to actually transform that is really powerful. And yes, I have seen, been present, been part of, and myself been experienced to those moments of wonderful transformational change. That's the kudoi, right? That lightning strike or that gamma strike in our brain that just changes everything. And I think, that's what we should all seek to embrace and share and be that catalyst for meaningful, positive change.
Yeah, yeah. I actually want to go back to something you referred to earlier, leaving each moment complete.
Mm,
So, um, we talked about regret the other day when we were having a chat, right? And I said I actually don't understand it. It's not something I really understand. And as I said, I've been rereading the Top Five Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware, right?
yeah.
So for someone who's listening to this, going, hang on, leaving each moment complete, can you give them an idea of how they can actually implement that practically? How they can practice being sure that they're leaving each moment complete?
Mm. Yeah. So it's one of the things for me, and I actually have another belief that goes with it, which is I believe that action leads to less regret than inaction. So if there's ever that moment when I'm unsure, I'll act, right? Because I believe, and the great thing about a belief is you don't need to justify it. And the moment I find myself justifying my belief, I know I'm engaging with it in the wrong way, right? I'm trying to take away that power of that belief, and it just doesn't work. So come back to I believe there is less regret from action than inaction. And that just gets me moving forward. So when we think about upset, and really, the quality of our lives is determined by the quality of our conversations with others, but primarily with ourselves.
Mm.
And a lot of people have very, very shitty self-narratives. They have very, very shitty self-dialogues. And when something doesn't go right, i.e. the world's wrong, they start on themselves. Like they are black belt mastery at beating themselves up,
Yeah.
right? And they'll go, oh, so stupid, Ash. Why did you do it? You knew better than that. Oh, and this is the second time it's happened. Like, why didn't you learn the first? So I'm there having a go at myself. And the interesting thing about that is when we actually think about any upset or any regret, right? What's the source of the upset? And it's either a thwarted an unfulfilled expectation. I expected Sally to do something and she did something else, and then I'm upset, right? So figuring out there's an unfulfilled expectation, a thwarted personal intention. I was going to get up at 4:30 this morning and do some exercise, and I didn't, right? If I didn't do that, thwarted personal intention, right? And probably the most powerful one is undelivered communication. I wish I had said, and I didn't, right? So if they're the sources of regret, what do they come from? It generally comes from not speaking up, not communicating clearly, or not setting that positive expectation. So we have to be very good at diagnosing what's going on and then taking the appropriate action to close that off and get it complete. And often that means stepping into a tough conversation with ourselves or stepping into a tough conversation with somebody else and potentially just getting that clear. And the point is that sometimes you don't even need that person to be there. You can write the letter, even if you choose never to send it. You can draft the email and leave it in your drafts folder. But the ability to process and articulate, because remember I said we get stuck if we have a disempowering belief that we create a story or a narrative to hold it in place, or we do some work with you, for example, and we transform it. That's our choice in any moment. And we never get to say what's going on, but we always get that choice of how we respond to that.
Mm.
So in terms of putting those things together for somebody who's looking to put the past in the past, what did we talk about today? Self-worth. Do I have the right to judge you? Absolutely not. But if I've got no right or no business judging you, which I think most people can get, then what business do I have judging myself?
Yeah.
None, right? I've got no business judging myself. Now, can I help myself? Can I coach myself? Can I support myself? Can I be my own cheerleader? Can I have conversations with myself that close things off? Absolutely. But beating myself up or judging myself, not helpful, right? So that's the foundational piece, right? Is we've just got to get that. And here's my favorite one, right? I should have known better when I was 18. What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you did that dumb thing when you were 18, Ashton. Like, how crazy were you? What an idiot. What were you thinking? I was 18. If I had have known better, I would have done better. The lessons in life keep repeating till we've learned them. If I had have known better, I would have done better. And crazy example, people do it all the time. Why'd you do that? Because I didn't know any better. If I had have known better, I would have done better, right? So step one is stop beating yourself up. You've just really got no business doing it. And the more that you're beating yourself up, the more you're likely to then start doing it to other people. That's going to rob you of your power, disconnect you, slow you down, create you small, create others small. So that's the foundational bit. If you're upset, get to a root cause diagnosis, right? What's going on? Thwarted personal intention, unfulfilled expectation, or undelivered communication. And then's the hard bit, do the work. Figure out what needs to be said to get complete around that. Figure out what you can own, clean it up, apologize, ask for the apology, do what needs doing, and then you clean. And then once you clean, you want to keep clean. And that's really the thing, is that, the more stuff you keep stuffing under the bed, the harder it is to clean, right? At some point, you've just got to go, enough, right? There's no more room under the bed. And metaphorically, where's under the bed? It's in our heads. People are out of capacity. They can't cope anymore. So at some point, we've just got to get it clear, stop, and just start getting clean with each moment. That's all we can do.
And one of the interesting things about that to me is that, there's often a whole lot of fear around it. As you say, the hard bit is doing the work, is having that conversation, is expressing those feelings that you've never expressed, or whatever it is. And it feels like we're making ourselves incredibly vulnerable. But through that process, there is such incredible strength. And once we realize there is nothing to hide, there is nothing that we can be ashamed of that other people have not also experienced. There is, then just the sense of empowerment that we gain through that, it's extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Brené Brown being one of those incredible leaders who shows the power of vulnerability and really gets that clear. I think she's just such an incredible leader in that space, and really leads for others, right? So a leader's somebody you'd follow to a place you wouldn't necessarily go yourself. And I think in terms of that, stepping into vulnerability, she models a wonderful expression of that with all the right attributes. It touches on one of my little bugbears, though, is that I did a podcast with one of my dear friends, Dr. Norman Shawn, around what I call the confidence trap. Is that people who wait till they're confident to get acting, or they go, oh, but I'm not confident. I can't do that because I'm not confident, right? It drives me nuts, because the only thing you'll be confident about is brushing your teeth. Why? Because you've done it every day since you're old enough to take responsibility, and you know how it's going to go. For everything else, we haven't done it before, and we don't know how it's going to go. So feel the fear and do it anyway. We don't need confidence, because confidence will create you small and within your comfort zone. And every time you sung out of your skin, and every time you got that role or that audition, you were outside your comfort zone. Every time you were brilliant on stage, you were outside your comfort zone, but you were courageous and you were competent, right? And that's what we need to look for. Courage and competence. And goes back right to the start around a law degree. I'm not a good reader. I'm not a good writer, but I had other competencies that I could bring to bear to get me through my law degree. Right? And we've always got some sort of competence we can bring, and then it's just a question of courage. Right? And that's a choice. Right? That is just the choice that we have.
And that ties in very much with fewer regrets when we take action as opposed to remain inactive. And it ties in also with that understanding of our comfort zone. If one of the roles of our subconscious mind is very much a protective one.
Yeah.
But the problem is that it isn't it that it always wants to protect us according to what it perceives as safe. And one of the things that it perceives as safe is something that's comfortable, that's familiar. And so it's kind of recognizing that and going, oh yeah, there's my little comfort zone, my little internal brain playpen, just trying to keep me safe. Um, and once we can recognize that for what it is, it's
Mm.
so much easier going, okay, and let's just extend this playpen. Let's just extend it for a second, right? It makes it so much easier once we get that.
It is, and there's a reason they call it your little voice, because it wants to create you little, and it's been around since you were little, and it cares so much about you. It wants to keep you safe, right? And that's okay. Like, I hear your little voice, right? But I've got this,
Yeah.
right? I hear
Yeah.
your little voice, but I'm going for it. Like,
Yeah.
I hear your little voice. There is a risk here, but I
Yeah.
got it, right? And
Yeah.
I think it's just engaging in, once again, the quality of our conversations determines the quality of our lives. How are we going to engage with our little voice? We're going to try and shout it down, try and ignore it, or we're just going to engage it in a really positive, thank you, little voice. I know this is potentially risky, but I got it. This is important. I'm going to go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love the way you talk about that. It reminds me of David Hawkins, the way he talks about that little voice. So he talks about it in the context of the ego, right? And different sort of stages or levels or whatever of consciousness. And he said, it's okay that we have that little voice. He said treat it like a little animal and say it's okay. It's okay, and just pat it and go, we're okay here. We don't have to try and kill it. We can just say it's okay, and like you say, and I've got this, and we don't have to identify with it.
No,
Yeah,
no.
yeah. Something that I would love to hear more about, which I know you do a lot of, is paying things forward. Um, you know that I read the transcript of another interview that you gave, and I looked at the stuff that you had said right at the end of the interview, and I was like, that's where I want to start with you, because that's where the real nitty gritty is, for me. Um, and one of your empowering beliefs, your fifth one on this list, is you believe in paying things forward. So
Mm.
can you tell us what that means and why you believe in it?
Yeah, so paying it forward just means the ability to do something for somebody without the expectation or the payoff, right? So as long as it's paid forward by them to someone else, I don't need anything back from it. And probably the thing that I give most of is my time. When people ask for coaching or mentoring, or Ash, I'm starting a business, or Ash, I'm just a startup, or Ash, I can't afford the corporate fees that you charge, but I'm like, sure. Or Ash, that article, can I, yeah, I'm just like, do the right thing with it and make sure you pass it forward when you get the opportunity. Because I think when I look at the mentors that I've had in my life, I haven't paid them back, but I have paid them forward.
Right.
And probably the greatest example of that was the late great Gav Larkins. I had the first "Are You Okay Day" conversation in Australia ever when I sat down with Gav one day and gone, "Gav, how you going?" He goes, "Ash, tell you the truth, I'm going shithouse." And it just made no sense to me. And I don't have the sort of experience or qualifications that you have. So it was beyond my pay grade. But I went, "Gav, you got to go speak to somebody or do something, but that can't sit." And you going that way just doesn't work. But Gav went and did the work, and Are You Okay Day was the project that came out of that
Mm.
conversation. And you think about all the Are You Okay Day conversations that have come from there. And that was Gav going, you know what? My father took his life in suicide. I was going to take my life in suicide. And now my stand is that no child should ever have to lose a parent for the absence of somebody just asking and answering that question. Are you okay? And
Yeah.
that's so powerful. And Gav's not with us anymore. The tragedy was his son died of a brain tumor and he died of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And there's a big loss there. That's Liliana, or wrong side. That's Liliana, who's Gav was her godfather, right? So she didn't get the privilege of being around him or having him in her life, but she got the lesson of Are You Okay Day from him and his courage in the face of, I remember sitting there one day down at his Clovelly place. He was dying, like he was a 6'3", good looking rugby player, and there was hardly anything left of him. I'm just sitting there holding his hand. He goes, Ash, the cancer might take my life, but it's going to take none of my life force. And right up to the end, his commitment was to, are you okay? His commitment was to pay it forward. And it was just so incredibly powerful. Like all of the people since and the difference that he's made, that is that true connectedness. That is transcendence. That is releasing attachment. And I think it's such an important reminder. Like I live in a commercial world. I live in a, if I'm going to spend this, I have to get that back. That's the conversation I have with every single client. If I invest here, where's my return? And that's different to the sorts of relationships I think we need in broader society. I think it's different if we're going to solve the sorts of challenges that the world has around resources, energy, population, mindset. We need a different level of connectedness. And I think it requires everybody to pay it forward where they can and not hold and not expect and not get attached to needing anything.
Yeah, 100%. And underlying that, just from what I'm hearing, is a generosity. Coming from a place of generosity rather than, as you say, fear and
Mm,
self-protection and holding it for ourselves. Paying it forward. This is great. I think it comes from a place of not being fearful to give.
mm.
No, where so much of our society is driven by fear that if I tell that person that, or if I help them, then they're going to take something away from me because they'll kind of somehow be taking over my territory or whatever it is, and just recognizing that that's a lack mindset,
Yeah.
not an abundance mindset. And if we keep operating from that mindset of lack, we're not going to make the changes that need to happen.
Correct. Because we need to start acting as one. And that doesn't happen when we're separated or fearful or scared of individual loss.
Yeah, yeah. Ash, I'm so grateful for your time here with us today. Thank you so much for your generosity and your insights and your wisdom. And I really appreciate it. And I know that the listeners will as well. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sally. It's heaps of fun catching up.
Yeah, ditto. And is there anything that you haven't said that needs to be said in this conversation?
I, I don't think so. I'm complete.
Complete. We've completed these moments.
Yeah, I think so. I think we had a great chat.
Well, sincere thanks, Ash. And I'll be putting, for listeners who want to sort of connect with you, I'll make sure there are some links in the text of the copy of this episode. Can you just tell people your website now so they can hear that as well, Ash?
Yeah, probably the easiest way to get in touch is just via www.hellostepchange.com. So that's the easiest way, hellostepchange.com. Ashton Bishop on LinkedIn. So pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. Happy for people to link in, drop a message, any questions, any follow-ups. But yeah, if there was anything that we covered and touched on today, and I know it's been a sort of a meandering cornucopia of different bits and pieces, if there was anything that you'd like further light shone on, then just reach out. We've got an article or a link or a book or something that we'd send on, and happy to do that.
That's great, and that's generosity for you. That's paying it forward. And if anyone's been listening who is struggling, I just want you to know that there is another side. There, you can get past the pain. You can get to the other side of the pain, and I see it happen every day. So please feel reassured that you don't have to keep feeling like this. Yeah. Thank you, Ash. Thank you, listeners. And I'll look forward to speaking with you over the waves next time. Bye, everyone.